quoting a great poet of our time. Is he nuts? No, he's insane. And the reason we're here referring to that is because we're going to be discussing this guy right here, the Gibbering Maldor. Now, the Gibbering Maldor in both incarnations, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, phenomenal creature. I mean, you got to think about this, right? It unto itself is madness and incoherence brought into flesh and then given a hunger to consume. That's what it does. You can almost liken it to one of the many oozes you can find in subterranean caverns. Now, when you start, you got to end up thinking about the Gibbering Maldor not as a random dungeon encounter. I know that a lot of people will try and make them out to be. They'll throw them in for fun. But, for a Gibbering Maldor, no, you can end up making that the highlight of a campaign. It is by far one of the monsters in the books that have touched my heart and maybe my mind, given its very nature. Think about it. To begin with, to hear a Gibbering Maldor is to spread madness and confusion. Understand that. You will slowly lose your mind because, unfortunately, to hear it is to lose a bit of your sanity. It can cause confusion. Now, when you encounter a Gibbering Maldor, play to that confusion. Have fun with that confusion. A lot of players seem to think that, well, especially new GMs, they're afraid to end up making their player base do something that the other one might feel is a little extreme, attacking each other for what seemed to be like a dice roll. The reason being is that they oftentimes forget what it is that's happening. Confusion. You don't understand. A sudden onset of madness, an idea might get in your head. Say, the rogue is sneaking up behind me. Shouldn't he be in the flank? Don't. He's taking this opportunity to end up stabbing me in the back, clearly because he values the coin that I carry. Yeah, I knew he was plotting against me. I knew, but fighter, he's got that look in his eye. He's gone mad. He's crazy. He's going to kill us all. They're all plotting against me. Why wouldn't I want to survive? And that is just it. The Gibbering Maldor can end up making a party turn on one another at times, depending on how severe you want to end up playing up that mental trauma. After all, it's a free action for the Gibbering Maldor to just start spurting off all these wonderful bits, to be confused. What's another fun thing about it? Well, one thing people seem to forget when they end up doing this encounter, right? They consider that this thing will engulf you and start biting you and draining your blood. Horrific as it is, as it bites and tears at your flesh, and you will be bitten, you will be torn asunder bit by bit. You better pray you are in plate mail at this point. But here's the sad truth of it. That is not its most dangerous. No, not by far. You see, this is where a lot of people get confused. Its most dangerous quality is that it can appear and disappear out of nowhere. Why do you say that, Derek? It doesn't have any real stealth abilities. I mean, let's take a look here. Supposedly a medium aberration. How can it appear and disappear? Reading, it's amorphous. It can go through a space 1/4 its size, a small slit in the cavern wall is enough for it to ooze in, squeeze through, and go out. And let's not forget, it can manipulate the ground, softening it, twisting it, shaping it. Looking back at my notes here, let's read it aloud. At will, as a standard action, Gibbering Maldor can cause stone and earth under its body to grow soft and muddy. The ground remains muddy for 1 minute after the mouth moves off the location. Gibbering Maldor can move through these areas with ease, but other creatures treat them as difficult terrain. Think about that. It can manipulate this whole bit, and well, it's not a particularly bright creature. I mean, looking at its base stats, I mean, its intelligence doesn't exactly scream a complete genius, but what it does mean is that the earth around it nearby, it can almost perpetually do this. Now, it'll harden once it's resettled, but what happens if it doesn't resettle in the way it used to? Well, under its body, maybe you want to play up a little bit because it can lean against a wall and start to do that. Oh, well, now it's making caverns, isn't it? Cavern network. Oh, here's an idea for a campaign. Have an entire town starting to go mad. Confusion, neighbors attacking one another. Everybody doesn't seem to understand. They're not quite right in the head. And maybe there's some effects after long-term exposure to this confusion. After a while, especially if it's been years, maybe, they stopped trusting each other. Maybe some try and move. Maybe some are afraid to move because, there could be someone lurking outside waiting for their chance. No, it's best to stay indoors. It's best to stay indoors to make sure that nothing bad happens to you. Meanwhile, just underneath the floorboards in a small hole that the Gibbering Maldor has made it starts to whisper. It starts to spread as its catacombs underneath that town. Why does it stay there? Well, much the same reason as a vampire. Derek seems to be associating this with a vampire, and it's not far off. It may not have much intelligence, but its feeding habits, its requirement for blood and gore are very relevant. It stays near the food source, and the food source, well, it doesn't want to leave. Paranoia, confusion, maybe deranged effects that'll put themselves in for the long-term exposure of a creature made of a mad mind. Where did it come from? Great question. Absolutely a great question. Now, in Pathfinder, it'll end up saying that it could be that a deity has spawned it as a punishment, much like the Tales of Lore, where a god will reach down and create an individual, twist them into a monstrous being. Maybe they're an experiment gone awry. Maybe something not quite from this plane. Who knows? That's the fun. Add the air of mystery. There's something to be said about the thing that should not be. The Gibbering Maldor is most definitely a thing that should not be. When the party encounters it, Gibbering Maldor looks at it as food. It's a wild animal. It will attack. It will retreat. It has no interest in dying. I mean, take a quick look at its stats. Strength, Dex is pretty high. Constitution, incredibly high. It takes a little while to end. It can take a bit of a beating. But the key thing to look at is wisdom. Wisdom implies that it at least has some degree of common sense, at least as much as its own mind can understand. And maybe to itself, it makes perfect sense. It's an animal in the loosest sense of the word. It understands to retreat. It understands ambushes. It understands to corner, to trap, to separate. It looks for the weakest in a group. It looks for whatever's the easiest meal, much like wolves. Now, they don't tend to gather. That's one key thing. You won't find many Gibbering Maldors in a single dungeon. No, no. What will you find, however? Well, maybe you'll end up finding the remains. I find a cult to be very interesting. After all, like I said, long-term gibbering in the head meat might end up leading to some rather tragic consequences. What if that cult worships the Gibbering Maldor, offers sacrifice to appease it so it doesn't take away little Timmy, who they want to grow up right? Little Timmy, on the other hand, is trying to figure out how to feed his parents to the Gibbering Maldor to raise himself up that he won't be the next to be eaten. Now, as far as this Gibbering Maldor is concerned, it's being fed. It might even be considering itself kind of like a pet. Oh, they keep feeding me, these people. I wonder why. I don't want to eat and feed them. They give me food until I get hungry. Makes perfect sense to me. And it eats. Oh God, it eats. When it envelops you, don't think of it as small bits of damage. Honestly, think on the damage a human mouth can do to a hand, an arm, a neck, a shoulder, a leg, or other various parts. It can be actually quite horrifying because you are being eaten alive. It doesn't care to kill you, then eat you. In fact, dealing with the Gibbering Maldor, it's usually the other way around. Consider that for a second. When setting up a campaign around the Gibbering Maldor, madness is the key part of the theme. It's an eldritch horror for those who are just starting their adventure. At its base level, it's a very difficult encounter for a lot of PCs. A player group may encounter one lurking somewhere beneath their feet. It could be hidden off in a far-off cave, but why? Why there? You need to consider these because, considering its ravenous appetite, what else would be in the cave? Not a whole heck of a lot that it can't eat, at the very least. So you're going to want to consider maybe Mimic. Mimic's a really good one. Why? Why Mimic? Well, Mimic hides. That's what it intentionally does. And a Mimic, if it's not large enough to try and eat the Gibbering Maldor itself, might end up hiding to avoid its detection. What else could be there? Well, you got Eldritch Horror, things of madness. Like I said, a cult, maybe. Maybe the Gibbering Maldor is the result of an experiment that has gone horribly awry. Well, then maybe animated objects, because after all, if a held up wizard started to twist His creations initially started with something, well, what's mostly on hand: statues, flesh, random parts. You can get a whole slew of different ideas that can just meld very well with it. The key thing is, why hasn't the Gibbering Maldor eaten it yet? Does it need to drink? Oh, yes, it needs to drink. It needs to drink the blood and eat the sinew. It continues to feed like that. Maybe, if you want to have some fun with it, a group of orcs have trapped it, started using it as the thing in the pit that they throw prisoners and slaves into. Think on what kind of orc would be dealing with that, because let's be honest, orcs are already savage, brutal individuals. Now, if you want to end up adding something eldritch to it, make them all crazed. And I don't mean just mwahaha kind of thing. I mean seriously deranged. Flaying the skin off of the arms of slaves, hacking limbs, and tossing them into the pit. Maybe to hear those whispers again, because they offer such great insight, or make the mind wander in places it wouldn't normally go. Considerations, thoughts, and taking advantage of that confusion. Of course, it's just them damaging their own psyche, but a psyche that is cracked, well, it doesn't know any better. It all makes sense to the orcs. With the Gibbering Maldor, horror needs to be at the forefront. The unknown, the mystery, the clues, the twists and turns, and the waiting is as you wait, as you build it up. When they finally encounter such a creature, it is no longer just a random encounter on table 2.8 with 2d10 rolled, and oops, there it is. It is something that permeates its environment, shapes it, shifts it, until at the end, there's only madness and gluttony. If you found this little bit of insight into the Gibbering Maldor useful, feel free to press the like button. If you'd like to end up continuing to see more of this kind of content, well, you know where the subscribe button is. And feel free to leave a comment. Maybe I've just gone mad. If you'd like to end up having a topic discussed, feel free to send it up. I don't mind giving my 2 cents about these little oddities. And until next time.